Hello there, and welcome back to Boardroom Insights with Alan O'Neill. This is August 2025, and I decided to put together a series of 4 episodes, all linked to step 6 of my 7 steps to profit, which is proposition. Proposition is all about how you interact with your customers and your unique selling proposition, what it is effectively you're selling, and how you sell it. And in doing that, I use the analogy of a 3-legged stool, because too many organizations fall into the trap of assuming that their USP comes from product alone. And of course, you need to have a great product, no doubt about that. But my belief and my experience is that your USP is formed from a combination of all 3 elements, which are product, people, and place. That's effectively the 3-legged stool. In episode 1, I positioned the 3-legged stool and proposition in the whole 7 steps. The next episode, episode number 2, I doubled down on product to show you some ideas and some, like a checklist, to prompt you to look at how can you develop your product or your product suite as a USP, unique selling proposition. Today, I want to focus in on people, and next week, I'll be focusing and doubling down on place. But with people in particular, look, these things are always in danger of being cliche. I accept that. But the importance of people in your overall proposition cannot be underestimated, and unfortunately, very often it is. But I want to start by telling you a story, and it's one that it's a famous story that is really very, very powerful, and it's called Johnny the Bagger. It's such a famous story that it's actually registered as for its IP. The story goes like this. This story, by the way, was first shared by Barbara Glantz, a customer service speaker and author. She was running a seminar for a grocery store chain, encouraging employees to find small, personal ways to make a difference for their customers. One of the participants in that group was a young man named Johnny. Now, Johnny was Down syndrome. Johnny worked as a bagger in the supermarket at the checkout. After hearing Barbara's talk, he went home and thought about what he personally could do. Just him, in his role, with his abilities to make a difference. He decided that every day he would create a simple, positive message to share with customers. With the help of his father, he typed up the message, printed multiple copies, cut them into little slips, and signed his name on each one of them. Then, every evening, Johnny would prepare a stack of these notes. The next day at work, after bagging groceries, Johnny would slip one of his notes into each customer's bag and say to the customer, "I've put a special thought in your bag today. I hope it helps you to have a good day." At first, no one in store management paid much attention, but within a few weeks, something remarkable happened. Customers began lining up specifically at Johnny's checkout lane, even if other lanes were shorter. When the store manager tried to direct them and distribute the customers across to other lines, the customers would say, "No, I want to be in Johnny's lane. I want my note." But of course, nobody knew what they were talking about. But Johnny had created a very simple human moment of connection that made customers feel valued. It didn't stop there. Inspired by Johnny, other store employees also started finding little ways to delight customers. The floral department began handing out broken stems that they couldn't sell for free. The meat department wrapped their purchases with a ribbon. The whole store culture shifted, all because one young man with Down syndrome decided to share kindness in a personal way. Now, it's a fabulous story. It's kind of an emotional story, and it just proves and illustrates the importance of people. In fact, I was chatting about this with a client the other day and planning for this podcast. And this client told a story of where his daughter and her husband were trying to have a second baby and were challenged in that regard. And they had built up a relationship with a particular pharmacy, which was quite a distance, like it was a 15-minute drive away from their home. Now, as you know, for anybody living in Ireland, there's a pharmacy on every corner. To get to this particular pharmacy, they passed at least 3 pharmacies on their way, and yet they went to a particular pharmacy every time they needed something. Why? Think about it. Every pharmacy pretty much has the same product range, certainly in the medical field. leaving aside all the other categories. But in medical categories, every pharmacy has the same products, certainly in Ireland. So differentiating yourself on medical products alone just won't cut it for a pharmacy. But in this particular example, the pharmacist was incredibly helpful, empathic, and sensitive, caring, but also knew them. And the pharmacist, when this client's daughter went to the pharmacy recently, which is out of her way, further to drive to, also the parking at this particular pharmacy was difficult. And as I said, they passed at least 3 other pharmacies on the way. But nevertheless, this particular pharmacist knew this guy's daughter and called her by name every time she went into the store. But one day, based on a prescription that she was asking for, the pharmacist was able to relate back to a previous episode where she knew they were challenged in the baby department. And she very sensitively and quietly and in a hushed way made the connection and congratulated this guy's daughter. And this meant an awful lot to them because it showed the empathy, the genuine interest that the pharmacist was showing to this guy's daughter. Now, you yourself can think of lots of similar stories, I have no doubt, if you stand back and think about it. That the importance of people, you see, many other businesses, whether you're B2B or B2C, they can copy your products, but they cannot just lift up the attitude of your people and copy that. They might try through various trainings and other, but this is fundamentally about culture, which of course, as you know, is step 2 of my model. Now, we're not going to focus in on culture today. We're going to stay with people, but I can't help myself but remind you that culture is the bedrock of getting your people to behave like that consistently when you're not there. But look, let's just talk about people. And again, in shaping up the uniqueness of your proposition, specifically on this leg of the stool, people, let's think about what do we want them to do? Well, I'm going to make this very simple. That whether you are in B2B, like on a call center, or whether you're selling computers, or whether you're selling industrial equipment, or whether you're selling beverages and they're being delivered by your truck drivers, or whether you're in a hotel or a retail store, it doesn't matter. The same model is going to work for you too. And the model is very simple. And I call it the 3 C's. The 3 C's are how we want our people to interact with customers. And it's very simple. And it goes like this. The first C is connect. Always make a connection. Yes, it is about basic things like good greeting, great eye contact, looking right, being presentable, whether that's on the telephone, by the way, or whether it be online, or whether it be in real person. Then making that connection, that warm connection, using a customer's name when you know that. It's like the concierge in a particular hotel that I stay in, the concierge knows my name and he always greets me at the door. And it makes me feel homely. It makes me feel welcomed. It makes me feel that they care. But it's so simple. And yet we just don't do it often enough. So encourage your people to make that connection, that be the first one to greet the customer. Don't wait for the customer to say hello first. Our people should be the first to say hello. Warm eye contact and a warm greeting. That's the connection. The second C is consult. And consult is all about taking the time in every interaction to understand what are the customer's needs today. So whether they phoned you or you phoned them, or whether they came into your store or came into your hotel, or whether they came into your restaurant, or whether they reached out to you in whatever way, take the time to consult using open-ended questions to really understand what it is that they're looking for today. Then the third C is conclude. And the conclude phase of that interaction, however long the interaction might be, whether it's only seconds, minutes, or whether it's extended over time, for that interaction, you got to conclude it. Wrap up what has been agreed, what you've agreed to do, and make sure you follow through, of course. A very, very simple framework, the 3 C's, connect, consult, conclude. And if we can get that message across to all of our people to use the 3 C's in every interaction, like I said, however long the interaction might be, it works every single time. There are major retail stores around the world that use the 3 C's because it works. So connect, consult, and conclude. Now, wouldn't you love for your people to be doing that day in, day out, even when you're not there. How do you get that? Well, again, I'm going to remind you of the importance of culture at the deep foundational stage. But let's just now also look at the people stage. What are the things that you can and should be doing in order to get your people able and willing to do the 3 Cs day in, day out? Well, you see, don't forget, there is this all sorts of evidence and research and data that proves that when your people are happy in their job, they will give great service. Now, I'm not talking about mollycoddling here, where we're just making our own people happy at the expense of other things like being productive or or customer experience. This is all about recognizing the link between having our people doing a great job, but having them happy and making them happy and making sure that they're right people in the first place. So I'm going to break it down into 4 categories. The 4 categories are recruitment in the first place. What do I mean? Well, you've got to make sure you hire the right people. And there's so many considerations around that about, for example, when you're hiring people, you're looking for the best fit, not just the best CV. Somebody with a CV, with a great CV, a great track record, could be a pain in the ass to work for. So be careful. Watch out at the recruitment phase. Also, when you're recruiting people, make sure that they know exactly what the job is. Let there be no ambiguity around what the job is at all. So it's the right person in the right job. And by the way, it's not only about recruitment. You may already have 10 people working in your team, but are the right people doing the right jobs in that team? So it's always worth their while taking time out to reconsider the best fit for the job that's required. Now, that's phase 1. Phase 2 is training. Training, well, obviously there's onboarding and there's induction training at the very beginning when you hire new people, but it doesn't stop there. We need to remember that ongoing training is essential because things change, processes change, products change, expectations change, and they need to keep refreshing our people because, look, for example, I'm driving a long time, but if I was to do my driving test tomorrow morning, I would fail. I'd fail miserably. I know I would because I cut corners. I do things I shouldn't do as a driver. I'm not unsafe, but you know what I mean. I know I do. I've developed a rhythm around my own driving style, which probably would fail me in a test. And what I'm saying here is that we all need a refresh in whatever key skills. And remember, for your people interacting with customers, you want them to interact in the best way possible. So whether it's retraining on customer experience skills or any other skills, training is a key component. The third component of developing this great productivity is communications. Communications is where it might be team huddles, it might be notice boards, it might be very, very polished emails, it might be very polished meetings, it might be your one-to-one annual review process. There are so many ways that we need to communicate with our people. But the important point is proactive communications is essential. Don't just leave it to chance. Don't just make assumptions that people know. You've got to just constantly it's like cutting the grass during the summertime. You cut it on a Saturday, and what do you have to do the following Saturday? Cut the grass again. And that's the reality with communications. You can never over-communicate. And particularly in time of change, and because there's so much change going on all around us, you've got to keep communicating. The fourth driver of great productivity within this HR mix is well-being. And in well-being, we're looking at work-life balance, we're looking at flexi time, we're looking at pay and reward, we're looking at recognition, we're looking at welfare. Now, when you stand back and you give due consideration to those 4 different categories, that's how you're going to shape up your proposition. And I want to summarize by saying this. Your 3-legged stool is your opportunity to shape your proposition. And within there, you're going to get your USPs, your unique selling proposition. In last week's episode, we already looked at product. Today, we're looking at people. And next week, we're going to look at place. And I want you to just, again, not let yourself fall into the trap of seeing your product suite as the only opportunity for differentiation. Let me remind you of Johnny the Bagger story at the beginning of this episode. Let me remind you also of the pharmacist, where people are going out of their way, passing by competitors to get to this pharmacy because of the people in that pharmacy who are creating such a welcoming experience. You have the opportunity within your organization to offer the same to your customers. I encourage you strongly to take time out in this quiet month of August and consider your people. So, what will it take for you to get your people doing what I'm suggesting, to help them almost create a moat around your business? I mean, your products are possibly available from other competitors, and that is not enough, therefore, anymore to differentiate you. You've got to look at the wider context, and that's where the three-legged stool comes in. So that's it. And next week, as I said, we will focus in on place. And again, I'm going to give you a checklist of things to consider under place, whether you're B2B or B2C. So thanks for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Before you go, you know your business has more to give. Your people are talented. The intent is there inside your boardroom, but something's not quite clicking. That's where we in Cara come in. I'm Alan O'Neill, founder of Cara, and I've spent 30 years helping organizations to unlock their full potential, not by working harder, but by working smarter, using our 7 steps to profit. This is a clear, practical framework that aligns your North Star, your culture, your customer experience, and your execution, so your business can grow without the drama. Our support is also enhanced by our own organization health assessment to give you clarity on what you need to work on in particular, which will more than likely be different to your competitors or anybody else for that matter. If you feel like your organization is full of effort but low on results, you're not alone. But let's change that. Why don't you book a no-strings discovery call at 7stepstoprofit.com? That's the number 7. One call could change your direction. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.